Hello, class. Discussion. I'm pretty excited to talk about the topics because I get a lot more energy, I think, from the ideas than I do younger kids. For whatever reason, they intimidate me less. Um, and so, thinking about the resistance busters for question number one from Somner's Flanagan 2007, um, thinking about what stood out most, I think getting on the client's side was something that's because if we can validate them through their emotions versus validate them through their um, behaviors, I can see that that would be a really important aspect of working with teens so that they do start to gain that. Um, and yeah, and I think that one also requires like a lot of counselor attention so that we don't, especially starting out, get in a place where we're doing that splitting defenses, where we're pinning one adult against the other, or um, validating their misconduct or their behavior. Um, so yeah, validate the reasons for their feelings, not their behaviors, and just creating that empathetic relationship where it's okay for the clients to feel how they're feeling. Um, I guess on thinking about which one would be the hardest for me to implement, I think watching my reactions to my buttons being pushed was something that stood out. Um, Using that as information versus engaging in that, what might feel like an automatic response to a client when they are trying to push my buttons or taking it personally. That might be another challenging aspect for me to implement with these resistance busters. Um, but yeah, I thought that the article was really helpful in just identifying resistance and then being able to pinpoint how, as counselors, we can be aware of creating that safe space and not encourage the resistance more. For question number two, choose one of the techniques from each of the three categories, pretending you are counseling your teenage self. So from Hannah 1999, I chose for number one, reaching clients, getting out of the office. I think when I was thinking about my younger self, I didn't go to counseling per se. Well, I did once or twice, and then we had a psychiatrist early on in my younger youth. But I had a lot of mentors and like pastors, and one of the things that was so beneficial in our time together was getting out of the office, and going out to lunch or going for a walk. That really energized my ability to think and reflect how I was doing, and I thought that was really helpful. I know there's like some parameters around that, whether that's doable or not, confidentiality wise and permission wise, but that one stood out to me. From the accepting section, thinking about my teenage self again, being clear with boundaries. There were a lot of opportunities and situations in my youth that boundaries were not upheld, and it created some really dangerous situations. And so I think having that clear sense of boundaries, especially as counselors or anyone in helping or like vulnerably relational roles, is very key. And it helps the students or the adolescents or children know what's acceptable and what's not, and create that frame of reference for themselves. Three, the relating section. Let the clients. I remember being really validated when some people, like my mentors, would validate something that I had said and having it be something that they learned too, and that just felt really empowering and like confidence building, that I was teaching them things that they didn't know about themselves or about me or teens in general. That was really, really helpful. So now either think of a current client friend and share one or more of any category you would use as their counselor and why. I think I want to really emphasize and work on developing a naturally confrontative demeanor. I think that's something that I do have a little bit more confidence in now that we've like been working on our skill. Maybe being the oldest in my family or something, I do have an ability to be confrontational, but letting that be part of in the relationship seems really important, as well as emphasizing the aspect of humor and just like lightness around the confrontative experience versus like what's actually being said. Yeah, I really did that article. I think it has a lot of important tips, and it'll be a really good reference to go back to as we begin to work with adolescents. Number 3, what is the biggest question you have and would like to answer in the class so far? I think the biggest question I have is actually about questions. Play therapy suggests that the therapist does not, or counselor does not ask questions, whereas the narrative approach is really grounded in question asking. My question for this section is there a middle ground, or does it depend on the theory as far as where it's acceptable to ask questions, gathering like the adolescent story? Yeah, the activities. So, article about brain friendly strategies really stood out to me because I really appreciate principles of what we're learning with neuroscience and counseling, like neurocognitive counseling. And so I chose to think about the activity of creating a collage of your life story and using art to build the therapeutic relationship so that then those new neural pathways can generate. I think any opportunity, like depending on what the client's interests, goals are, role plays or acting, doing different activities in general, I think can be really helpful. But the collage of your life story just stood out. And I liked how that article discussed normalized activities in counseling, and that is something that we should share with the students too, that like this is just a normal part of what we do in this room, and it can help in many varying ways. So yeah. So I chose the video on anxiety in adolescence. I think that's I feel like I wanted to watch all of them, which I might go back and watch some more, but depression and anxiety I think are huge for college students and adolescents, and we'll probably be likely to see them a lot. So I chose that for that reason. Yeah, this video was interesting. It came from more of a CBT approach. And so there are 5 key interventions where identify triggers, and for the students, increase flexible thinking, increasing self-efficacy, increase emotional relaxation training. The skills that they used in this video were attending, listening, observing, psychoeducation, and using challenges to gain insight. Aside from the fact that I was really annoyed by the counselor and how much she talked, probably because our training is very much keeping our paraphrases short, and she said a lot, which is something I'm trying to work on not doing. I thought it was really beneficial to watch this session and how you can work with cognitive beliefs and distortions and kind of disbanding them and finding where they come from, which I think is really helpful for a lot of teens and probably college students as well. Just reviewing the question to make sure I'm not veering too far, sharing with your peers why you chose it. Yeah, so I guess 2 important concepts would be from that video is just really creating a safe relationship where the clients feel comfortable, and in that one, the client definitely, I think, connected with the counselor so that she could confront the counselor could confront the student when she was talking about some of these irrational beliefs about herself and unrealistic, and then created a platform for how to deal with the anxious thoughts, which I thought was really helpful, as well as the relaxation training. I'd be curious to watch a follow-up of that session to see if the student was able to implement those things and how it worked for her. Yeah, and also the emphasis on psychoeducation. Feelings are sometimes bigger than reality, and that's one of the things that the student, I thought that that aspect of integrating psychoeducation in throughout the session felt really natural and important, so that the student could create the adolescent could create a context for why and how why these things were important. Yeah, I think that's it for this week. Thanks for listening again, and I'll talk to you guys soon.